Okay. Hi, guys. I know most of you, not all of you, but I'm Kelly Hogue. I am a behavior advisor and the founder of Root to Rise and of Morning Magic Collective, which falls under there as well. I started doing breakfast for female identifying entrepreneurs in Manhattan when I was living there and starting my business and had no idea what I was doing and wanted to be surrounded by people who did, or at least seemingly did, and could help me. I didn't know anyone who had their own business who was my age, and I was like, help. So I started Morning Magic Collective and have since, like everything else, taken it virtual and expanded it to. I realized there's so many amazing people in this network who are doing cool things, and I want to spread their knowledge and their strengths to the masses. So, in addition to breakfast, we also now have events. And Evan was kind enough to agree to do one, and she's just so amazing, and I can't wait to learn from her. And I think that this is a topic that is especially important right now and very top of mind, but is important always. So I will allow her to introduce herself.
Yay,
Away.
guys. I'm Evan. I'm so excited for this. I'm based in LA, but like Kelly and probably most of you at this point, all of my whole world is virtual. Um, I'm a dating and love life coach. So it's funny, I started my business about 4 years ago as a dating coach, and um, very quickly I realized that even as a dating coach, like I don't know, 80% of the work that I do with my clients is the inner work and is really focused on our relationships with ourselves, because that's, everything we experience, the relationships we create, right? It's all an extension of our relationships with ourselves. So any, you know, dating advice, how to put yourself out there, like slapped on top of a not so loving self relationship is probably not going to turn out in a way that feels really fulfilling and connected, and where we get to feel empowered in our relationships. So, love this topic. And my big thing, and this is what we're going to dive into in a second here, is that self love, I feel like, has become very buzzwordy. It's like, self love, so hot right now. And we don't do a lot of talking about what that actually means in action, in practice. So I teach self-love as a practice, right? As an actionable way that we can cultivate a loving relationships with ourselves, not something that we're just hoping to wake up one day and be like, oh, I love myself today, or I don't love myself today. It's not all or nothing. And it's not this like vague thing that we just have to, hope that it happens to us. So really excited to have you all here. I would love, kind of right before I jump into the content that I want to share, and this whole hour will certainly be interactive. I'm not a, PowerPointy teachery person, but I'd really love to hear everyone share just a quick sentence or two of what drew you to this topic today. Like, what had you say, I want to spend an hour diving into self-love? Or what are you hoping to get out of today? However you want to phrase that. I'll just, to make it easier, I'll just call you out like in the order I see you on my screen. So Catherine, you want to kick us off?
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Catherine. Um, I am interested in this workshop because I am in, a long-term relationship, and I, feel like lately I've been feeling super attached to maybe his energy of like feeling like really calm and relaxed when I'm like around him, and losing touch a little bit with like being in my own company and just like my own relationship with myself. So just coming back to that and remembering that like that is still my first relationship, and reconnecting to that is what drew me to this. So yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Love that. Allison?
Yeah, similar. And also like in alignment with what you said as well, Evan, in terms of like it feels like all of the work that I do with clients like comes back to this aspect of that self relationship. I'm a leadership coach, and oftentimes I'm talking with people around how to lead themselves. And so my own journey with self love has been up and down with body image and, you know, like limiting beliefs and all sorts of things along those lines. So I always love finding new ways to celebrate self-love and I'm big on celebration and like appreciating myself and my gifts.
Looking to be in, can you still hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My AirPods just died. But yeah, I'm always looking to be in the company of other folks, like having this conversation and learning new skills. So that is what I'm doing.
Awesome. Love it. Jackie?
Not similar. Single as fuck. But I was like, I actually didn't pay too much attention to the topic because I'm just like a member, and when I can come, I'll come to whatever I believe Kelly puts together. It's going to serve me in whatever way, and I'm kind of more of a go with the flow, which I guess I'll talk about with Kelly tomorrow when I finally have my my one-on-one. But I am going to a Tantra speed dating event in Central Park on Saturday. And I have not been touching any of the apps for like 2 months already. And I feel very good about being single again. I feel like sometimes you get into that hole where you're just like, meet somebody and, you know, you're judging everybody on the apps. So I feel like I have already brought some energy back to me. So this is great timing.
Awesome. I want to go to that event. Blythe?
I wanted to say really quick, I used to do speed dating a lot when I was in New York. It's so fun. I actually dated several guys from there. So I'm wishing you like good luck. It's just like have fun with it. It's really fun actually. So yeah, I've been on a journey of like making myself a priority because I haven't been able to concentrate on myself for several years because I was taking care of my parents. And so I'm also like just getting back into dating, and I'm trying to make sure that I don't fall into the old patterns that I did before where I'd lose myself in a relationship and just like have to plan and be in everything and do it. I'm just kind of like, just let them do some of the work. So definitely hoping to like learning some tips to just make myself number one, and you know, they can be number two.
Yes. You're the prize. Remember that. Sarah?
Yeah, just I think for me, like your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship, and it's probably the one I ignore the most. So just trying to like tap back into that and just understand a little bit more about why I act the way I act. And again, like not like what you were saying before, but like to not fall back into old patterns. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Harley and then Caitlin.
Hi. I am also single, and I think I have a lot of I feel like I have a lot of self-love in certain areas, but it feels like total disconnect from my self-love in the areas of like body image and dating. So I'm excited to see how I can like I get in my routine of like doing meditation and yoga and stuff, but I feel like figuring out what practices could support me in those areas will be really helpful.
Yeah, so good. Caitlin?
I think for me, I've realized more and more lately that a lot of my like actions are fueled from not so much a loving place, more like a sergeant kind of place, like you have to do this or you're not good enough, right? I always am looking at what I'm not doing, and becomes exhausting. And so just kind of recently been starting on how I can have like a kinder, gentler way with myself, kind of the way I talk to everyone else. Why can't I like that towards myself? It's very much not equal. So trying to cultivate that more.
Yeah, such good awareness, and really leads us perfectly into the beginning of this content. So first of all, thank you all for sharing and like being vulnerable in this space. I relate to all of the above. These are all things that I've worked on, right, in my journey. Of course, anyone who coaches, for the most part, it's because we've gone through all of our own stuff and are still very much on the journey. So yeah, really relate to all of it. And oh, we have one more joining. Let's say hello to her before we.
While Felicia pops in, I just want to also say that I probably subconsciously and selfishly asked Evan to do this because I am right there with you guys too, and went through a breakup, a good old quarantine breakup with someone that I lived with, and having to rediscover that relationship with myself and what that looks like and what real self-love is, like beneath, you know, just self-care, but real deep self-love and like being your own best friend, I think is so important. So I'm right there with you guys. I'm very excited for this.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing that, Kelly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. I love like all the, you know, I don't want to say surface level, but you know, all the bubble baths and I love it all. I really do. And sometimes those things can become routine, and they're great. I mean, they're certainly never harmful, but there's a like deeper, right, place that we can go and really, I think that's why we named this Becoming Your Own Loved One. So let's jump in, unless Felicia, if you can hear me. We just did a quick round of what brought you here tonight, what had you want to spend an hour with this topic. So if you would like to unmute yourself and say a quick hello, you're welcome to. Okay, we're gonna dive in. If at any point, Felicia, you're like, come back to me, we will. So 3 keys to becoming your own loved one. We have, 45 minutes left. I'm gonna dive in as much as I can with you all today. And obviously this is a big topic and we could spend, many, many weeks, months, years going into this. So I'll share at the end, kind of places to learn more about what I do, some invitations for anyone who wants to go deeper. But please, take everything you can from today, ask questions, share, stop me if something doesn't make sense. Oh, perfect, Felicia, all good. Okay, so the first bucket we're going to talk about, right, 3 keys, is self-talk. So this is Caitlin. I was like, yes, thank you for that lead in. Couldn't have planned it better. Our inner voice, right, runs in our head all day, whether we're conscious of it or not. It is the voice, the messaging that we will receive most, hear most throughout our entire lives. So think of if you were, this is kind of a weird analogy, but just go with me. If you were locked in a room, and those in old movies when they'd show brainwashing, they'd have a TV on and people just getting completely brainwashed by whatever messaging they're receiving. That's kind of us. It's a dark analogy, but right, we're receiving our own messaging all day, every day. And that messaging is really, really impactful. We believe what we hear the most. So when we're looking at our relationships with ourselves and we're wanting to create a more loving, affirming, empowering relationship, starting with noticing that inner voice, right, and doing some work to shift it, to kind of change the channel, is really, really powerful. And to Caitlin's point, there's kind of this myth, I think a lot of us, tell me if anyone can relate to this, of if I'm hard on myself, it will help motivate me. It will help me change. It will help me, do better. Or sometimes that's the fear of why we don't want to let go of that, right? Critical inner voice. And in reality, there's plenty of research to back this up that, shame does not work. Shame, judgment, blame does not work really for long-term sustainable change. And we can actually motivate ourselves and we can absolutely have goals and want to grow and all of that. And we can do that from a loving, supportive place that's actually even more effective. So the first thing I want to do is I want to lead a 3-minute little tune in just to check in and get us grounded, and then we'll see what comes up and we'll share. Okay. So I invite you to get comfortable. I like to kind of plant my feet on the ground when I tune in. You can let your eyes close if that feels good for you, or just find a kind of blurry gaze. If it's helpful to bring your hands to your body, I find for myself too, when I'm tuning in, getting connected to myself, having my hands on my body helps to anchor me. And just starting to deepen your breath, bringing your attention to the sensations of your breath moving through your body. Just starting to maybe get more attuned with yourself than you have so far today. And I'm just going to ask you some questions, and I really invite you to see what comes up without judging it, without making it wrong, without trying to find the right answer, just noticing. Does your inner voice tend to be more affirming and supportive? Or does it tend to be more critical, more self-judgmental? When you look in the mirror, specifically, what kind of messaging does your inner voice feed you? What do those automatic thoughts tend to sound like? When you mess up, or think you mess up, or feel like you made a mistake, or you get some feedback that's not so great, do you tend to offer yourself compassion and comfort, forgiveness, encouragement for next time? Or does your inner voice tend to go to beating yourself up and ruminating on it? Now I'd like you to imagine the way that your partner or future partner, desired partner, someone who loves you unconditionally, imagine the way that you desire for that person to speak to you. The tone of voice, the kind of language, the kind of names. How does your inner voice, the way that you speak to yourself, compare? Where are the gaps? And finally, bringing to mind your best girlfriend or sister or mother, some woman in your life who you love and adore. I want you to think about the way that you speak to her, what you tell her about herself, what you say to her in tough moments. How does your inner voice and the way that you talk to yourself compare to the way that you show up for the women in your life? Noticing any gaps without judgment, without making it wrong. And then finally, as we close out this little meditation, can you just imagine for a moment, like really play pretend, that your inner voice was every bit as loving, supportive, affirming, empowering, encouraging, forgiving, compassionate, right? Like truly as incredible of a friend to you, a loved one to you, as you want it to be. And imagining what that would change for you. What would feel different as you go about your day? What possibilities would that create for you? What would that shift as far as what you believe you deserve? how you put yourself out there, what impact would that have? And just knowing that that's possible for you. It's not all or nothing, but it's kind of setting in our mind a goal of what we want to step into. And as we close this out, just giving yourself some love and appreciation for being willing to go there, being willing to explore and notice. And coming back to your breath and back to your body and back to this space. When you're ready, letting your eyes gently open. I'd love to hear from a couple of you what you noticed. Is there anything in particular that stood out? Anywhere, maybe let's say that you really noticed a gap in the way that you want to love, support, empower yourself with your inner voice, and where your inner voice tends to go. Yeah, Allison.
I noticed that, so like my body image connected to self-love has been a journey throughout my life as I've been in seasons of working out and competing and like being very active, and then in seasons of not doing as much of that. And I noticed just at like in the part of the reflection about like looking in the mirror, and I just sort of noticed where I'm at presently versus kind of like, not versus, but compared to where I've been at different parts in my life. And so I'm sort of starting to think, and I can tell I'm on a journey with it. It's a never ending journey. But it just sort of, I noticed like, oh, okay, I've slid a little bit in one direction, and like that gives me kind of direction to slide myself back towards.
Yeah, beautiful. What's, I'm gonna ask you one more question, Allison. Does anything come to mind when you think of, like what's an affirming message, or what's the message that you would want to hear from yourself when you look in the mirror? What would feel?
Yeah. So it's, I always like to look at myself because I'm short and compact and have very big muscles for a creature my size. And so I always like to say, you're a machine. Like, I'm just a machine. Like, I can run, I can lift. I'm a machine.
Yes.
That's what I like to tell myself.
I love that. I love that so much. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else notice anything? A place where there's room maybe to upgrade your self-talk? Yeah, vibe.
So for some reason, I feel like I have multiple personalities when it comes, like when you're mentioning each thing, I was like, the way I talk to my friends and the way I think about myself when I'm talking to friends, or when I'm in a relationship, or just when I'm looking at myself. So I'm like, I have like different voices for different relationships, and they don't always align. So yeah, it's something I'm working on, but I just going through each one, I'm like, okay, I need to like think about how I talk to myself no matter what relationship I'm in.
Yeah, I love that. That's really interesting. Such good noticing. What else came up? Yeah, Sarah.
Someone else share. Oh.
Sarah, Jackie. Yeah.
I just noticed that I speak to myself in such a different way than I would want other people to speak to me, and how I speak to other people. Like, there just seems to be such a huge disconnect between that inner voice and like what I would say to my friend in the same situation, or what I would want my friend to say to me in the same situation.
Yeah.
And it's a work in progress. I'm definitely noticing a more positive approach to how I like speak to myself, but it's still a battle every single day. It always starts negative, and then I have to like fully correct it to positive. So yeah, where I'm struggling, but working on it.
Yeah, totally. Well, and you know, something I want to say, and I want this to be really clear for everyone is that our first thoughts, right? Like, let's use looking in the mirror as an example, or, you know, you feel like you messed something up, right? The first thought, the first message we're going to give ourselves is an automatic thought. And so that's where we want to be really, really careful to not make ourselves wrong for whatever the thought is, to not judge the thought, because you see how it all just gets compounded. If it's like, I'm working on my self-talk, and then I go to look in the mirror, and the first thing I hear is like, oh, like your skin doesn't look good today, or whatever it is, right? And then I'm like, oh, what's wrong with me that I like thought that thought? And then we're just in this loop, right? So we really want to just start to notice those initial thoughts without judgment as best we can, right? Like, oh, it's interesting that that's where my inner critic, right, is chiming in. And from that place, when we have the awareness and the non-judgment, that's where we get to choose. Now, do I want to feed that line of thinking, right? Or, to Sarah's point, getting intentional about how would I want a girlfriend to speak to me in that moment? Or if I heard my girlfriend being, criticizing her appearance in that way, what would I offer her? Or what messaging would feel better? Right? So not expecting it to be automatic. And as you practice this, it does start to shift the automatic thoughts as well over time, I promise. Right? But not kind of expecting perfection in that area or anywhere else in our life. Yeah. Yeah. Jackie, did you want to share?
Sure. I have a more general question. So this, I don't know, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, whatever it was, I did ayahuasca. Mm-hmm. My second time. First time was like, woohoo, the voice disappeared for like 6 weeks afterwards. There was like no problems going on inside. And then I got the flip side of that on this journey, and I had tremendous amount of grief, and I went into like a hole for like 6 weeks. But what it gave me was the ability for me to develop the compassion within myself. And I think that was the gift of the medicine, was that like, even when I'm in this hole, can I meet myself with compassion?
Yeah.
And so I feel like the voice has improved, but, there's areas like I've never had an issue with my body. Even in COVID, I gained a bunch of weight. Like, I don't care. Like, it just is something that never crosses my mind. And so is there a way to ever get to, how that's how I feel about my body? Can I get that way about my business or relationships or, other, like you said, my body doesn't bother me, but my skin, right? All these wrinkles that are coming in near, the gray hair and like the aging stuff. Like, mm-hmm. Is there a way that how it is in one part where there is no voice, can you get to a place of no voice in another area? Or all areas?
Yeah. I mean, listen, yes and no. Okay. So I have personally, and maybe it's because I've yet to do ayahuasca, but I don't have any single area of my life where I have no inner voice, or where there's never an insecurity that pops up, or never. So I can't say for sure, because I haven't experienced that there's a way, and I don't even know that I would want any of you to set the goal of 0, right? Like, I'm 100% positive, loving, never a thought, never a sound in my mind that isn't stellar, right? Just because that's a really, really high bar. And then what we feel like we're failing, even if we're moving in the right direction, because we're expecting it to be perfect. That said, my guidance to you would be so when it comes to your body, there's just a really healthy narrative there, right? That something like my body, I'm making this up, my body gets to be exactly as it is and has nothing to do with my worth, or I don't need to make any meaning of that, or right, my body I get to feel good in my body wherever she is on any given day, something like that, right? And then when it comes to these other areas, there's some narrative that's wrinkles equal bad. I'm simplifying it, right? But wrinkles or gray hair or signs of aging means I'm less desirable, or there's something that I have to fix.
You hit the nail on the head.
Good guess. So that's where to start, right? It's just looking at that narrative, and then looking at the narrative you have around your body that gives you so much freedom, right? Where there's kind
Yeah.
of like non-attachment to it being a certain way, and starting to play with, you know, can I kind of poke holes? And of course, this is a whole exercise in and of itself, right? To work on our limiting beliefs there. But can I start to poke holes in this idea that, you know, signs of aging equals I'm less desirable? And are there ways for me to celebrate the fact that I'm aging, or at the very least, you know, work on a narrative of detaching aging or skin or monthly revenue or whatever it is from my worthiness, my lovableness, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the goal is never like that the initial thought's not going to be there. It's our choice, basically. So that's what we should focus on, the choice of like how we meet that thought. Just how I was like meeting the grief with my compassion.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Well said. Right. Because as we meet those thoughts with acceptance, non-judgment, like, oh yeah, of course I have these thoughts around aging equals not desirable. That's the messaging I'm being literally fed by the media and advertising and, you know, patriarchy, etc., all day long. So it's really natural. I don't judge myself for having those thoughts. And I'm going to choose now not to feed that line of thinking, and to give myself some reminders that actually help me let go of this thing that isn't my value, right? Yeah. Okay, amazing. So we could spend this whole time is going way too quickly right now, on self-talk, and I want to keep going. So what I want to leave you with on that note is, if you haven't already, just starting to notice, like I invite you as you leave this call to just start to notice your inner critic voice. And it's helpful to even label it as that, right? Because it like disconnects it from ourselves. It takes some power away from those thoughts in and of itself, just to notice it and be like, oh, that's my inner critic who's harsh on me about blah, blah, blah. That's not actually my like core self. And then seeing what's a more supportive message that I would like to receive. And you can use any of the little, right, like what would my girlfriend say to me, or what would I say to her, or how would I want a partner to show up for me in this moment, right? I call it your inner cheerleader. And as you practice that, I promise it becomes a whole lot easier to notice and shift without kind of having to go through it as like an exercise every time. Cool? Okay. The second one, this one's a little more fun, a little more light, is I want to talk about one specific way to create really loving self-care for yourself, that just might be a different lens than you've looked at self-care before. So who here knows your top 1 or 2 love languages? Great. Okay. If you don't know them, after this call, you can Google the 5 love languages quiz, free, quick, fun. Who has primarily thought about your love language or love languages through the lens of, you know, this is how I receive love from others, and like this is a framework for me to teach people, right, what I need to feel loved and cared for. So that's usually how love languages are taught and talked about, and that's all true and great. And I like to kind of flip the script and see, how can we give ourselves love? How can we find, right, like activities, make choices that are self-caring through the lens of our love language, or love languages, knowing that that is something that like we personally, right, it's specific to us. This is how I best receive. I know, right? I just had this epiphany one day, Kelly. I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. Why does no one talk about this? So what I want to hear, actually, will everyone first just in the chat stream, if you know your, let's just say your number 1 for time's sake, love language, drop it in the chat stream, and I'll remind you: words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, quality time, and gifts. Love it. Yeah. So we're all different, right? Which is why self-care is like so not a one size fits all thing. And oftentimes when we're feeling disconnected from ourselves, we can look, and maybe we're getting just in a routine with our self-care where it's like, yeah, I take my baths and I do my journaling, and we start to feel like, we're just craving more love from ourselves or more connection with ourselves. We can look to our love language. So now what I want to do is have each of you, can you think of an example and put it in the chat stream of how you could show yourself love under the umbrella of your primary love language? And if you're like, I have no clue with this one, give me a hand up and we'll brainstorm. Yeah, love letters, writing myself a letter, absolutely. Baths every night. Oh, mirror work, so good. My TV and fans being more quality. Yeah. Jackie, are you quality time? Yeah, that's perfect. Intentional, slow quality time with myself. Yeah. Cooking myself a nice dinner, spend time alone with my thoughts, spending an evening watching a movie. Right. So quality time, that's a perfect example. Here's the flip side of it that I want you to think about. If, let's say yours is quality time, right? Imagine that your partner or future partner is there on the couch with you. You know how it feels as a quality time person if someone is on the couch with you and they are on their phone, distracted, right? Like there but not present with you. It's not just a bummer. Like, doesn't it actually feel like you're being neglected, ignored? It's painful, right? So when you think about how much of our time that we're alone, we just think of it as like we're alone rather than spending quality time with ourselves. What does it look like for me to unplug from distractions? Yeah, totally. Turn off the phone, choose an activity, whether it's cooking, whether it's a bath, whether it's journaling, and even just setting that intention of like, I'm spending quality time with me. You can feel how that's such different energy than another night where you're also at home by yourself, but you haven't set that intention and your attention is outward, right? Cool. I want to see some other examples. Okay, words of affirmation, yes. Writing yourself a letter, love letters, your self-talk, of course, important for all of us, but I think even more so in some ways for us, words of affirmation folks, or at least when it comes to, oftentimes we think about, I'm going back kind of to self-talk for a second, where we look at where we're hard on ourselves or where our inner critic really chimes in. Another place you can deepen your self-talk that goes hand in hand with words of affirmation is when you do something well, when you have something that you're proud of, right? I'm talking like any little win is giving yourself that inner, I think Allison said it, celebration. I think of it as like mental gold stars, right? All day, every day. Like for the silly little things that you're like, I just wrote that on my to-do list so I could cross it off because I already did it and I'm going to celebrate it. Right? Or like, oh, I'm feeling cute today. Rather than just being like, great, I'm not being mean to myself. It's like, can I actually lean into that and really give myself some love? Like, what are all the things I would want a partner or, someone else to say to me, right? To really build me up. Acts of service for myself looks like doing things I tell myself I will. Yeah. Taking care of things I'm avoiding. Totally. And again, Allison, just adding the intention, right? Where you're like, I'm doing this as an act of love, as an act of service to myself. It's like you're doing the same task that maybe you were already going to do that morning, but now it gets to be a way that you're pouring back into yourself. Hiring some, oh, Jackie, that's so good. Yeah. Also, totally. If acts of service is your love language, it's like knowing that hiring someone to take something off your plate, right? Or to delegate something, to invest it back in yourself in that way is so self-loving. It's amazing. Gifts, pretty intuitive one, right? But just, again, knowing that's your love language, you can really infuse it with that intention when you're like, I'm, finding little thoughtful things that brighten my day or that feel good in my space, or whatever it is. And then, you have a great reason to indulge. Is no one here physical touch? Just me? I'm the only toucher? Okay, well, in case it's resonant, I have had to think more intentionally, especially during quarantine, right? About actually giving myself touch. There's something well, everyone just hold your own hand for a second. Humor me. If you like that, you can do it like this. If you think of it as like, I'm holding my own hand and like giving myself love in this way, can you feel there's like some really lovely energy in there? If you have it be intentional. Maybe you're like, that's weird, that's fine. Right, but like really giving yourself the touch that you crave, or similar to Jackie's example, it could be if you felt safe, COVID-wise, like getting yourself a massage, or and of course, with all these things, asking others for what you need, but really finding little ways throughout your day to pour back into yourself. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Giving yourself a hug. It's so real. I love it. Okay. I'm going to keep going. But does everyone feels like they have an idea of like something they can incorporate, right? Cool. Okay. Last one, last key to creating a loving relationship with yourself is the most radical form of self-care, which is boundaries, right? So again, boundaries could obviously be an entire lesson topic, and I'm sure when you've all been in Kelly's world, no one is like totally unfamiliar with the idea of boundaries. But I'm curious, does anyone, self-pleasure? Oh, well, that goes without saying. Yes, please, worship your bodies. All the pleasure. Oh, that's funny. Okay, you guys must know me well. We don't even really know each other. So, boundaries. Does anyone here ever struggle with boundaries or with saying no? Does anyone consider themselves a people pleaser or recovering people pleaser? Many of us, yeah. So what I want to say about this is that I used to kind of pride myself on being a people pleaser. Like I thought that meant, oh, I'm just so nice. I just never want to hurt anyone. I just never want to let anyone down. I just care about other people so much. And maybe some of that is true. And what really shifted my sense of confidence in myself setting healthy boundaries is this realization that every single time we say yes to something out of obligation, or we choose to put someone else's needs or desire or comfort, right? I don't want to say that thing because it might make them uncomfortable. They might be, right? Every single time we put that before our own, again, coming back to your relationship with yourself, I want you to really think about the message that sends to yourself as far as how much your own needs and comfort and preferences and desires and your time and your energy, right? How much it matters. And right, like really, really feeling into the impact of that, because all the little things, so much of it we can justify, right? We're like, well, it's not that big a deal for me to just go with this thing or say yes to that. I can fit that into my schedule, or, whatever the thing is. I remember, years ago when I was dating, like at the end of a date being like, I don't want to make him uncomfortable or feel rejected or hurt his feelings, you know, by like turning down a kiss. So I'll like, it's just a kiss. That's all it is. It's not that big a deal. I can have a quick peck and walk away and I'll be fine. But like, right? What message does that send myself that my, you know, protecting this person's whatever is so much more important than my own, like honoring my body and what it wants, even in that little way, which isn't really so little, right? And with work, right? And with like, I don't want to let anyone else down, so I'll just be available all the time. Yeah, setting boundaries with dating is so empowering. I love it as well, and it took me a long time to get there. So no shame if there are places that, you know, boundaries are popping up for all of you. I'd love to hear anyone who can think of a current example. Ew, gross. Anyone who can think of a current example, could you drop it in the chat stream of, is there anything, I bet everyone can think of something if you really like yourself. Is there anything right now in your world that you're wanting to set a boundary around? Something you're wanting to say no to that you're wrestling with, or that you've already said yes to that you're like, but I actually don't want to show up for this thing? Or a boundary around your work hours or availability, or a boundary around the way someone is talking to you or some behavior that's showing up in that relationship, something you're available for or not. Again, nothing's too small. Like something that you feel like it would be really self-honoring for me to say no to this. Oh, Felicia, perfect example. Yeah. Right, feeling bad that they can't afford it, so you are undervaluing yourself and your work, and you are taking less than you're worthy of. Yeah, feeling pressured to go to your boyfriend's family for Christmas. Totally get that. Yeah. So keep popping them in the chat stream if you can think of anything. What I want to offer you is just the little reframe that setting a boundary or saying no or letting someone know when something bothers you, right, is not about shutting that person down or taking something away from that person. It is about choosing you. Right? Like, what would it look like for me to choose me in this moment? What would it look like for me to, yeah, exactly. Not saying no to them, but saying yes to myself. Exactly. What would it look like? Yeah, not listening to my friends and family about who I should and shouldn't date. It's my life. I mean, I would add to that, Blythe, like if this is helpful as far as a boundary, is that you can actually also just say to them, you know, hey, I want to take this topic off the table. I'm really working on trusting myself and listening to my intuition when it comes to my dating life. And so, you know, I'll share with you when I have something to share. And otherwise I'm not, you know, I'm not available to have these conversations or to get input in this area. Yeah, taking a break from, deadline boundaries, about the communication of the boundary initially and then honoring it after it's been communicated and it's still trying to be crossed. Yeah, I mean, that's a big topic. Would love to do another workshop on this, but real quick on that note, Jackie, because it's such a good question. The communication of the boundary initially. So what I will say about that is just like the clearer you can be, clear communication is kind communication, right? And oftentimes we want to be kind of like dance around the boundary we're setting, you know, or instead of saying like, you know, I'm actually just not available for that, we make an excuse of why we're busy, and then we're like annoyed when they ask us again, you know, to do it another time, because we never really said, oh, I'm just not available for this thing. Or, you know, or we're like, I can't think of more examples, but you know what I mean? Like our language is wishy-washy, or we're trying to dim it down so that no one's uncomfortable. And we're not really clear in what we're communicating. So, it totally depends on the situation, but first getting clear for yourself on what's the boundary I'm wanting to set. Like, what do I want this person to know? Right? Being clear in your delivery of it. You can even say, if it's helpful, especially if it's with someone in your life who you're not used to setting boundaries with, right? Like I often see this with clients in like a family dynamic, or, right? We can give them the context of saying like, I'm working on XYZ, listening to myself, or I'm actually working on setting boundaries right now. I'm working on letting people know when something bothers me. I'm working on asking for what I need. And so it's a gift. Like, this is my other reminder, right? Sharing something that feels vulnerable. And to me, sharing boundaries feels vulnerable oftentimes, especially as I got started on that practice, is really a gift to the relationship with that person as well. Because if they don't know, they're not in our mind. And if they don't know what our expectation is, or they don't know what feels good or not good for us, and so then they just keep trying, and then we're resentful or whatever. Like it does not serve our relationships for us to not have a voice around our boundaries. Right? And it gives them permission to do the same, and all of that. Like healthy boundaries, are key in healthy relationships. So being clear, owning it, you don't need to apologize for it. It can be helpful depending on what it is to share where you're coming from, or why it's important to you. If it's behavior that you're giving an adjustment around, like if you're saying, hey, this really doesn't work for me, or this bothers me, then also sharing like, here's what would feel so much better. So like asking for what you do need, right? Like sharing the solution as well. And then honoring it after it's been communicated and still trying to be crossed. It's okay, again, depending on what it is. Like oftentimes we do have to remind people if it's just like their pattern, like let's say it's that someone is always late or something, and that like really is triggering for you, it doesn't feel good for you, and you talk about it and that's their pattern, and it happens again and they kind of forget about it. Like, let's not expect people to change overnight, or that it's necessarily going to be a one and done conversation. And we can say, hey, remember I brought this up, XYZ. But if it's, if it continues to be a pattern, or let's say it's something that you're like, my boundary is like, as we're getting to know each other, here's like where I want, as far as I want to go with our intimacy, and like, I don't want to have sex until XYZ, whatever it is, right? And you feel like they're pushing that boundary, like that's also where we can get really clear on how we're being treated, and if that person is showing up with respect and listening, and right, we want to make sure like it's our job to honor that for ourselves. And again, like making that choice, what would it look like to choose me in this situation? We want to give people a chance. We don't want to make them read our minds, but we also don't want to put ourselves in positions where we feel like we're having to, defend ourselves or put a guard up to take care of ourselves. I know that was like a relatively vague answer because we didn't have a specific example, but you got something in there, Jackie? Okay, cool. Okay, so to wrap us up, because I know we're at time and we just lost a few people, all good. My closing reminder to you, of course, is that your relationship with yourself, all of this, from the way that you speak to yourself, to the narratives you have around yourself, to the actionable ways you take care of yourself and show yourself love, to setting boundaries and asking for what you need, it is so worth prioritizing. Like, I know that life is busy. I know that there's so much going on. I know that I'm sure you all show up for other people in so many ways in your work and your personal lives. We are the only person who's ever going to focus on our relationship with ourselves, right? Like it's our responsibility and it impacts every other facet of our lives. So it is so worth carving out time for, whether that's something you just do on your own, whether you want support in that area, right? Like you really, really, really deserve that. So I don't want to take too much longer and keep us over time, but I will share, and I'm sure Kelly, do you send a follow-up email, or we can share info after the fact? Yeah. Anyone who's really wanting to prioritize deepening your relationship with yourself, I'll share the invitation to check out the course that I offer, which is called Love from Within. It takes you through all of this and way more in a lot of depth over 10 weeks with guides and exercises and practices, video lessons. There's a community aspect of other women going through that support. I'm in there on the community page, answering questions, giving support. It's a 10-week course, but it's self-study style. So you can really make it work for you on your own time. And you get lifetime access to everything. So you can really make it work for you. And what I'm going to offer for Kelly, for anyone in this community, if you check it out and it's something you want to enroll in by the end of the weekend, I'm going to offer a bonus one-on-one coaching session that we can use together to dive deeper and really support you in whatever you need to move forward towards your, loving, empowering relationship with yourself. So I will, I'll give Kelly the info to send out. I'll also just drop the link. What is it? /LFW? Yeah, Love from Within. In the chat stream if you want to check out the course. I think you all have my email, or you will if you've got questions about any of this at all. Reach out to me. I'm so here to connect with you. And thank you for joining tonight. That flew by.
Thank you so much, Evan. This was so great. So great. I'm such a fan of tangible action steps you can do right now. And this was exactly that. So thank you.
You're so welcome.
Yay.
So good connecting with you all.
Yes. Look out for my email, guys. I'll include this video and all of Evan's information, all her info about the course and all that. But thanks for coming. We should all give ourselves a hug.
Yay. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
For having me, Kelly.
Yeah, my pleasure. Bye.
Bye.